Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I would like to thank the member of Nunavut for perhaps one of the most powerful speeches I've ever heard in the House, and certainly hope that all members of this place take an opportunity to listen to the power of her words. Last night, one of my constituency offices was vandalized. I want to thank my team of staff who have gone to clean up the mess this morning. My team works hard every day to help people in our riding because they care and because they want to see life better for the people we serve. I also want to thank the security folks in Campbell River who work all night to keep our streets safe, who contacted me last night to let me know. I deeply respect their work and their dedication. And I want to thank all of the workers in this House who have driven or walked during these unprecedented times to make sure that this place still works on a long weekend that is meant to be focused on their families. The House of Commons team shows up every single time, regardless of who is sitting in any seat in this House, and I admire them for it. I am now on my 7th year of working in this place, and I'm a person who never wanted or planned to be a politician. I came here because more than anything, I hate injustice. I came here because I'm a white girl that was adopted into an Indigenous family who at a very young age realized that how I was treated was different than the majority of my family. It took me years to understand that what I was seeing was racism and colonial systems that are everywhere in our country still today. I learned again and again a very important lesson. I cannot participate in minimizing the voices of marginalized people. I cannot minimize any form of action that at its roots has any form of extremism. And I take this very seriously, Madam Speaker, because I know our planet's history and I know our country's history. When the majority is minimized, when the majority minimizes the bodies of marginalized communities, pay. If I'm not careful inside this white body, the bodies of my children and of my grandchildren and of my family are at risk, and I do not take that lightly. So here we are, and I am very clear that I hear people are saying that they don't feel safe. Whether it is the workers at the Ambassador's Bridge, near the Ambassador's Bridge, who watched their jobs become at risk because of the blockade, who were terrified when they heard folks in the US talk about why they should continue to partner with Canada when these kind of things can happen, who have fought so hard to keep these jobs in Canada and know how fragile the relationship is. Or it's the working people who are seeing the cost of their everyday expenses grow while watching their income stay the same or lessen. They just want enough to get by every day and are put in a position of constant worry that they will not be able to afford what they need to survive. And they do know that they are not getting the help that they need. Or it's the young people who are scared because they know that having the ability to purchase a home or even rent one is something that they cannot imagine to be able to afford. Or it is the citizens of Ottawa who live right where the blockade happened for 3 weeks and felt like there was no end in sight. Citizens who I saw while I was walking to this place yelled at for wearing masks. People with mobility challenges that had vehicles blocking their way so they couldn't get where they needed to be. I asked several vehicles to move just a couple of feet so that that person would have their right to transport themselves safely through their community. And the responses I received were very clear and sometimes very rude no's. Or it's the people in this community who had fireworks shot off in the middle of the night as they slept. The occupation continued night after night. Can you imagine the fear of waking up hearing that noise, not knowing where it's coming from? Or it's the 4 people charged with attempted murder of the RCMP officers, or the people who were blocked from returning home at the Coots intersection for days. Or the journalists who are terrified now across our country, who have been spat at, yelled at, called fake news after years of service in their field. Or they are the nurses, doctors, and healthcare workers who for the last 2 years have put everything on the line for Canadians, working too much overtime, feeling overwhelmed, having to tell their patients to wait, even in some cases for life-saving supports because the pandemic overwhelmed our healthcare system, who have been threatened and told not to go out in public. wearing anything that shows their profession because it is not safe. People are afraid, and I feel that as I listen to our debate on this long weekend. I believe and have participated in peaceful protests that were full of anger and frustration at the issues we wanted to change, fix, or to see taken serious by the governments. That is not what is happening across this country. And I also, Madam Speaker, do not believe that it is over. We saw an occupation that became a complete undermining of our democracy and our social structures. The leaders of this occupation had an MOU that spoke about overtaking the government. They invited opposition parties and the Governor General to come have a discussion about how a new government would look. I will not minimize this. I simply will not. I may not agree with many components of the processes of our institutions. I believe, in fact, that there's a lot of work to do to decolonize our systems, to address key issues like systemic racism, ableism, white privilege, and how these institutions continuously leave out workers, the poor, persons with disabilities, members of the LGBTQ2+ communities, and people from the BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities. Even with that perspective, I will not minimize that what it does when people, to our communities, when people do not respect the rule of law, when they flaunt their complete disregard for what a peaceful protest is, and when they create a party on the street that does not respect the people who live where they are occupying. Just yesterday, when I was trying to walk to this place, I saw a business owner chasing two men out of his store with a stick. It was frightening, and as I watched, I was trying to think of what I could do to help. But I also thought to myself, this is what happens when people disrespect the rule of law. When they set up bouncy councils and hot tubs in the streets and say, look how peaceful we are. People become emboldened to do actions that our social structures often prevent. So I will not minimize the fact that the lead organizers of this occupation are from groups of extremists who follow very clearly the beliefs of white supremacy. I believe there were many people out there who wanted to speak out about mandates and about their fear of the unknown and their future. However, I also know that the leaders were very clear about their agenda. Madam Speaker, this agenda scares me. I will not minimize it by saying there are just a few bad apples. I believe these people to be very organized. I believe that they take advantage of people's fear and give people someone to blame with those fears. This is where all of us as parliamentarians must look at history. Humanity sadly has a history of dehumanizing people from the communities I mentioned earlier. It is these people, these souls, who often pay the most terrible of prices. So I will not minimize the power of white supremacists and their ability to build fear. And I will not minimize that that fear can become a weapon. The NDP has used every tool at its disposal to get the federal government to act. We called for a debate specifically on the occupation. We moved a motion in committee to study the measures to keep money coming from outside of our country to fund this occupation and make sure that those dollars are all held to account. We moved a motion to invite the U.S. ambassador to the Foreign Affairs Committee to address concerns of the prominent U.S. political figures encouraging people to donate and support the convoy leaders. This was voted down by the Conservatives and the Liberals, with the Liberal member from Vancouver Centre saying, this is not an urgent issue. We have too many more urgent things, and I will definitely be voting against it. Well, Madam Speaker, I simply disagree. I cannot imagine any other issue right now that is more urgent. So now here we are. We're debating the Emergencies Act, and I wish that all levels of government had worked together more efficiently, that members of all levels of government had not minimized who is coming to our nation's front door. Governing in whatever capacity a person has is not easy. I personally struggle often over the decisions that I have to make in this place. This one has been very hard, and it should be. There are steps that all parliamentarians should be careful when we take. I wish I had heard a lot more of a thoughtful debate in this place. Sadly, there's been a lot of political shots taken, ones that further destabilize our democracy and our communities. On one side, we see the government who is dismissing legitimate fears and concerns from people who are afraid. On the official opposition side, we have people who are stirring up fears and amping up dangerous rhetoric. I will be voting yes. I will continue to take my duties seriously and with great possibility be ready to withdraw my support at any moment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.